Hello and welcome to episode 94 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, kicking it with me today on the stream of dreams, the show of shows, and everything in between. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. You know it. You love it. And if you haven't already, I just dropped 2 TikTok videos just yesterday talking about, kind of Square Enix's big bet on blockbuster games. The idea being that, Square Enix wants to make quality over quantity of games. And the idea being that they're going to focus on their biggest blockbuster franchises for that. So, kind of to a long story short, especially the point that I tried to make on that video is have fun with, playing $250 million Final Fantasy 17s and 18s and 19s. And are there any other franchises that Square Enix does that aren't Final Fantasy at this point? I mean, they sold off, a lot of their other Western studios, right? They don't have Hitman anymore. They don't have Tomb Raider. They don't have. Do they still have Just Cause? Do they still have the Avalanche team? I'd have to look it up. But the point is that these days, when you think, Square Enix, you are probably thinking maybe Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, and then that's kind of about it. And I think that's unfortunate, is kind of the point that I was trying to make in the video. The other thing that I mentioned in that video is that, this is not unique to Square Enix. I picked on Square Enix, but, we just saw last week with, Bethesda's studios shutting down, courtesy of Microsoft. They're probably betting on the biggest blockbuster franchises as well. So this is not unique to Square Enix, not unique to Xbox either. This is just a trend that we're seeing in gaming right now, that the biggest AAA game developers are pushing for the biggest franchises, and with little to no room for new IP, though we are going to talk new IP in a moment to make a liar out of me. Thanks, Activision. But this is what we're currently seeing in gaming. Then the other video that I dropped on TikTok was about games that you really like, or not games that you like, but yes, I would say games that, how would best to describe it? Games that you really like, that you recognize as being important, but struggle with in terms of maybe difficulty or getting into or completing, things like that. So the example that I gave in that video was Elden Ring. I recognize that Elden Ring is an incredible game. I recognize that it's a very important game, especially in terms of open world action adventure RPGs. Like, I get it, right? As someone who has spent a bunch of time playing Horizon Forbidden West, and I'm not trying to pick on Horizon Forbidden West because, there's other open world action RPGs that do this. But that world is not particularly interesting to run around in. It's gorgeous, but I just didn't feel inclined to explore, turn over every rock, smell the roses, all that stuff. The way I did in something like Elden Ring, the way I did in something like Red Dead Redemption 2. The problem that I had is that Elden Ring is fucking hard, dude. It is damn hard. And then I say that as somebody who's beaten other From Software Souls games. The example I always give, and the example I gave in that video was that I have finished Demon Souls on the original PS3. Now, in fairness, it took me a while to get there, and I benefited from people because here's the thing you need to know about Demon Souls is that what we think of in terms of Bloodborne and Elden Ring and Lords of the Fallen and Lies of P and all those games, it really started with Demon Souls on the original PS3. Of course, Demon Souls also available on PS5 as they're part of the remaster, but everything that we know of those games really came from Demon Souls. So one of the things that people kind of benefited from over time was members of the community, writing guides, YouTube videos, whatever, just figuring out what Demon Souls was. And you could argue that maybe Demon Souls is a simplified version of what we have today, in part because it was From Software figuring it out for the first time. That being said, I don't think that takes away from the initial difficulty that Demon Souls has. However, one of the things that Demon Souls benefits from compared to Elden Ring is that it is not an open world game. right? It is not some, big open world for you to get lost in. It is a very, narrow level design. There are secrets to uncover. There are, hidden paths and things like that. But at the end of the day, Demon Souls is set up in terms of there are 4 worlds, and in each, or 4 or 5 worlds, I forget exactly how many. And each world that you go into has 5 levels that are all interconnected. So you could run from one end of one world to the other end of that world, if you wanted to. But at least, and you can actually approach these worlds pretty much once you beat that first level. You can approach almost any of those worlds in any order if you wanted to. Which is fun and gives you some openness, but it's not a scenario where it's like, I just walked from one end of the open world in Elden Ring to the other. I got my ass killed by some crazy thing, and now I don't know where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do. I get that Elden Ring is about getting lost and finding yourself and uncovering all those secrets, and I recognize that. I just found navigating that world to be a little bit more difficult in terms of not only combat, because you can just run into an area that you were totally unprepared for, but also finding that sense of direction, finding that sense of purpose. And I bring all of this up because I have been thinking a lot about Elden Ring. I know that Shadows of the Erdtree expansion is coming out sooner rather than later. So maybe it will be time at some point to get back into Elden Ring. I will most likely start a new game. I don't think there's any point in me loading up, 25 hours or 20 hours into a save that I've completely forgotten everything that I'm trying to do and the style of combat that I'm approaching. But yeah, those are the 2 videos that I dropped on TikTok. I don't usually ramble about the other content that I produce, but if you get the chance, check those out on TikTok. They're only about a minute long each, and I would appreciate it. Coming up on the show today, we have, I'm bringing back a segment that I try not to do when I can avoid it. But shit I should have talked about last week. We're going to talk about that actually to kick off the show. And then a ton of news as it relates to Sony. Sony has replaced Jim Ryan with not one, but 2 CEOs. We're going to talk about that in a moment. A new studio is being formed within Sony. A new Activision studio is being formed. Square Enix news. I know we talked about Square Enix just to start off the show. We're going to talk about more Square Enix in a moment. Assassin's Creed Shadows has been announced, but that does not stop Ubisoft from canceling a game that was in development. We're going to talk about that cancellation in a moment. Some video game adaptation news as it pertains to TV and film. Some Warner Brothers news in terms of the Adult Swim published games that they worked on with indie studios, and some Summer Games Fest, and so much more. But we're going to kick things off with shit I should have talked about last week. Shit I should have talked about last week. I will work on the music for it. Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut PC players are getting auto refunds if they cannot legally sign up for PSN. So here's the thing to know. If you remember going back to our conversation around Helldivers, I was maybe unnecessarily mean, and I recognize that, unnecessarily aggressive, unnecessarily mean towards the Helldivers community, because one thing that I learned in doing these news is that news stories is that PSN is not available in a lot of different countries and territories around the world for legal reasons, whatever the case may be, right? So if you go back to that Helldivers story that we talked about, the idea was that, Helldivers was supposed to launch with PSN requirements for online play, which is an online only game. So what you see is what you get, right? Then the game launched and it was a hot mess. And then people were basically allowed to play the game without any PSN connectivity whatsoever, right? No account linking with Steam on PC. I'm specifically talking about PC, right? Obviously, if you have a PS5, you have a PSN account because that's the way the world works. That being said, Ghost of Tsushima is a single player game with an optional online multiplayer component. However, in order to play that multiplayer and in order to get the trophies in the game, you need to connect a PSN account. So still Sony finding ways to force people, who maybe don't have PSN accounts on PC to create PSN accounts, link PSN accounts to their Steam, and away they go. The problem is that about 177 countries and territories around the world do not have PSN. So what has Sony done? Sony realized this after they took people's money for Ghost of Tsushima's director's cut and have now just given people auto refunds if they cannot legally sign up for PSN. So that is the scenario. They, gave some amount of refunds were given when Sony initially made that decision with Helldivers. They have reversed that decision. So you no longer, at least for the time being, no longer require PSN linking on Steam PC gaming for Helldivers. However, they have not made that change with Ghost of Tsushima, instead deciding to just auto refund people. And this is, again, in due in part because Helldivers 2 was originally being pulled from sale in 177 countries. That has been reversed, but now you're getting auto refunds if you cannot do it for Ghost of Tsushima. The idea being, oh God, we need to just prevent this from happening again, if possible. And that's the shit I should have talked about last week. I meant to bring this up, especially because, Ghost of Tsushima is out today. It is Thursday, May 16th. Happy Ghost of Tsushima on PC Day to everyone out there who's playing it. I have downloaded it. I have not had a chance to play it. I have been playing some other games, and we'll talk about those games later on in the show. But that was the thing I really wanted to cover, is that, like, it is the norm that on console gaming, and I would say, listen, I'm not trying to sell out and not fight against the system with discussing it on the podcast. But the other thing I would say is that, like, I have given over to the system. I've signed up for more third-party, secondary account linking services than I can even remember at this point. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. In terms of account linking, Ubisoft, EA, Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, who else? 2K, Rockstar, which you'd think like 2K and Rockstar are owned by the same company. Nope, separate accounts, right? So if you want to go play Top Spin on the PS5, they're probably going to hit you up with like, yo dog, where's your 2K account? Even though, you maybe didn't need one for WWE or whatever the case may be, or NBA. But what I'm saying is I have signed up. I think when I did, when I played Exoprimal, who can forget Exoprimal, the third person dinosaur shooting multiplayer game that Capcom put out last year? I believe I had to sign up for a Capcom account in order to play the game, which just goes to show you that I'm not a real Street Fighter player, because I have touched some Street Fighter games over the years, but on my personal hardware. I've touched the Street Fighter games on my own personal hardware. That I could have phrased that slightly less sexual. But have you ever seen Zangief? He's 100% sexual. Okay, the point is, I've signed up for a bunch of bullshit that I've probably forgotten about. My data has probably been sold to just about everyone. I'm surprised they're not trying to sell my data back to me. But then I remember that time that I played Middle-earth, Shadow of War. I think it was Shadow of War. And Warner Brothers was like, hey man, you don't have a Warner Brothers account. And I was like, why would I need a Warner Brothers account? And they're like, hey, if you get a Warner Brothers account, we'll give you an additional 3% bonus experience for everything that you do in Middle-earth, Shadow of War. And I was like, you son of a bitch. Where do I sign? And the rest is history. Now let's move on to some other news topics here today. The headline, the big news story, I would say, is Sony has announced not one, but two PlayStation CEOs to replace Jim Ryan. Now, I don't know if that means that they believe that it takes two average men to do what one extraordinary man did, that man being former PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan. But Herman Hulst and Hideki Nishino step up to the plate as part of new leadership roles. They are dual CEOs, which all I'm saying is AEW only has one CEO, right? AEW only has Mercedes Moné, right? And PlayStation, they need two. Just goes to show you what sort of shape PlayStation is in. But Herman Hulst will serve as the CEO of the new studio businesses group, Sony announced in a message to staff. From interim CEO Hiroki Totoki, Nishino will meanwhile be appointed CEO of the company's Platform Business Group. The two will take up their roles on the 1st of June, when Chairman Totoki will step away from his position as interim CEO. If you remember, Hiroki Totoki was Sony CEO and was stepping in to fill in that void. In his new role, Herman Hulst will be responsible for all first-party PlayStation game content, as well as bringing its franchises to new mediums such as film and television. Hulst has served as head of PlayStation Studios and previously led Guerrilla Games. Guerrilla Games was acquired by Sony in 2005. Since then, the studio has been best known for its work on the Horizon series, which I have nothing against the Horizon series. I would just really like a new Killzone. Is that too much to ask? I would kill for a Killzone right about now. I also think that Killzone Shadowfall game that launched on PS4, one of the nicer looking PS4 games, especially for the time, and maybe took the gameplay in directions I wasn't necessarily super excited about, but I like the Killzone universe. I like the world. I know it's not the Halo killer that Sony tried to position it as, and that's fine, but hey, Guerrilla Games, could you just make a new Killzone? This is a quote from Herman Hulst himself, the Hulstomaniac himself. Quote, "I am thrilled to lead the studio business group and continue to build on our success with PlayStation 5 while preparing for the future. The video game industry is one of the largest entertainment industries in the world and has been built on the marriage of content and technology, and I look forward to continuing to push the boundaries of play and entertainment." Nishino, meanwhile, was previously SVP of Sony's Platform Experience Group. He will continue to oversee technology, product, services, and platform experience as part of his new role as the CEO of the company's Platform Business Group. In addition, he will oversee third-party publisher and developer relations and commercial operations. This will include sales and marketing of hardware, services, and peripherals. So he's going to be the guy trying to sell you a PlayStation Portal, I guess. Nishino said, "We will continue to connect players and creators through world-class products, services, and technology. I am honored to be appointed such an important role alongside Herman. By working more closely together, we will be positioned to build incredible experiences for an ever-expanding audience now and in the future." Both Hulst and Nishino will report to Totoki when the changes come into effect on the 1st of June. Towards the end of his message, Totoki said, "We will hear more on Sony's plans later this month, perhaps confirming a showcase is in the cards, perhaps even for May." Quote, "The future is incredibly bright for Sony Interactive Entertainment, and that is thanks to all of you. Since I became chairman in October 2023, I've been inspired by your enthusiasm, innovative approaches, and teamwork. These values will serve us as we embark on the exciting future of SIE." And as a reminder, Jim Ryan, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. I got nothing against, personally Jim Ryan. I don't know Jim Ryan. I just have never been a fan of his style. There was an air of arrogance to him for a long time, even when he was running PlayStation Europe, that I was never a huge fan of. But I will say that, he has been nothing if not successful. Sony reportedly shipped 5 times more PS5 consoles last quarter than Microsoft did with Xbox, but console sales are dropping across the board. And when you hear that, you might think, well, why would the sales be dropping? Maybe it's because damn near everybody that wanted a PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S have bought one already. Just a possibility. We are like in the middle to late, late's a strong word, but we are damn near like 50-60% of the way done this console generation. I would even lean closer to 60% done this console generation at this point in time, especially when you hear rumors of, a PlayStation 5 Pro coming out this year, when you hear rumors about, and I for the record, I really try not to talk rumors on this podcast. I just think there's so much gaming news in general to discuss that I would rather avoid talking about, bullshit rumors and speculations in general. That being said, when you hear rumors about PlayStation 5, professional PS5 Pro coming out later this year, when you hear rumors that, Xbox might be trying to get a jump on the next generation of console hardware, it just goes to show you that, like, they probably see the writing on the walls in terms of console sales drying up, and that is at least being confirmed going as far back as last quarter. That's according to, so the data that we're getting on the console sales is part of Nico Partners analyst Daniel Ahmed, who's done some digging after Sony's latest financial reports released on the 14th. The PS5 shipped 4.5 million units in the last quarter, meaning Sony has now sold over 59 million PS5 consoles in total. That is roughly the equivalent to PS4 at the same point in its life cycle. So the PS4 was a very popular console, going as far as to be the most popular console of that generation. Microsoft, meanwhile, has seen a 31% year-over-year drop in Xbox console sales. Although specific figures have not been released, that's because, Microsoft refuses to put out sales data for their consoles now. And I'm assuming that's because they don't have good news to report on. So let's try to hide it, especially from shareholders. Interestingly, though, I just said 31% drop year over year for Xbox. Okay. Interestingly enough, PS5 sales have dropped 29% year over year, although console sales are up for the year as a whole. So when I say, hey, console sales might be drying up in general, I'm not trying to pick on Sony. I'm not trying to pick on Microsoft. They both find themselves in a similar situation. The problem is that Xbox has not been competitive in terms of console sales for a very long time. I would say for this entire generation. So to them, it looks a lot worse than Sony, though I imagine Sony was budgeting and putting their financials together with the hopes of having higher console sales in general as well. Together, it's a sign of slowing console sales across the industry, although overall sales for PlayStation consoles are significantly higher than the Xbox Series X and S. That's matched by Sony's seemingly inability to sell more consoles than the previous generation. So they're selling consoles like hotcakes, but not as many as before. Makes you wonder why. More Sony news. I don't know if you remember, but Deviation Game Dev, the Deviation Game Studio was closed by Sony. Now, former devs of that studio have come together to form a new Sony studio, in the hopes that they can create a top-class new IP and not have to deal with red tape from previous projects. As listed on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit, former Deviation dev Michael Anthony wrote on LinkedIn, "Hey, I hear that a lot of previous Deviation Games employees have set up their own studio at Sony working on an undisclosed new IP. All the people I see working there that have signed up are top-class developers and hope that you can create a top-class new IP with your studio and hopefully gives you all the time you need to create new quality projects and not have to deal with the red tape of previous projects." So that's from Michael Anthony. The idea being that, there was a lot of bullshit getting in the way of people's ability to work on games at Deviation, and somehow breaking away from that studio, but then still being under Sony is going to remove that red tape. Very curious to see how that works out for them. But, it's a new studio and potentially a new IP. Someone's going to have to form a new studio by the time this is all said and done, but Square Enix has laid off people across the United States and European offices. Shares have also dropped following the latest financial report. Fortunately, we have not a lot of detail surrounding the layoffs at this time. What we can say is that Square Enix has been hit by a round of layoffs impacting employees in its US and European offices as part of, quote, structural reforms. It's unclear how many are affected, but as VGC reports, staff were informed during an internal meeting on Monday. Eurogamer, where I'm getting this story from, contacted Square Enix for comment. The layoffs will happen over the next month, with employees in publishing, IT, and indie games division, the Square Enix collective, most affected. Remember that, This is similar to what we saw with Take-Two when Take-Two closed, or when Take-Two let go a lot of people at Private Division. So a lot of these AAA game developers and game publishers do have indie publishing arms. The idea that they're going to help, get some indie developers games out the door, published, marketed, all that stuff. And in a scenario where Square Enix is focusing on the biggest of the biggest franchises, something like the Square Enix Collective, where they're helping indie developers get their games out the door, seems like a really easy thing to cut as part of, quote, structural reforms. UK employees will enter a 1-month consultancy period as per local employment law. US employees could leave their positions even sooner. Square Enix released its latest financial reports in which the company stated it had, quote, begun optimization costs at its European and American offices via structural reforms as part of a plan to rebuild overseas business divisions from the ground up. So when you kind of put that together, when you combine that with, trying to focus on the highest quality, biggest games possible, as well as this other news story that Square Enix has kind of been a part of, saying that Square Enix is aggressively pursuing new multi-platform strategy after reports that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth underperformed on PlayStation. It really seems like, Square Enix has taken a good, long, hard look in the mirror and realizing that they are currently in the business of making Final Fantasy and not much else. They need to put Final Fantasy on every possible console platform if possible. And that, that is going to be it for the foreseeable future. And that these big games need to be big, both in terms of critical reception, but as well as sales. But there's a problem with this. There's a problem with this way of thinking. And I'm gonna use Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as an example. By all, reviews and critical reception that I've seen, for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it is a better game than Final Fantasy VII Remake. But it is the sequel to Remake. So when you have a big game like Final Fantasy VII, the original Final Fantasy VII, get a remake, and it's announced that it is going to be split into 3 separate parts, how do you get everybody on board for all 3 games? And I think the answer is you can't, and we're seeing that as a result with part 2 of 3 being underperformed. Now, yes, it is on PlayStation. I'm not going to pick on PlayStation as part of this. I really just want to pick on Square Enix, because when Square Enix put out Final Fantasy VII Remake originally, it came out in 2020 on PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 had more consoles sold at that time, and it was just around the time of lockdown, COVID, all that stuff, right? But the other thing is that it was the first part of the remake of Final Fantasy VII, meaning that anybody who was familiar with the game, not familiar with the game, could get on board with Final Fantasy VII Remake and play it, getting in on the ground floor. Okay. But the other problem is that part 2 might not be a continuation of a game that people want to play. Like, people might have gotten their fill with Final Fantasy VII Remake with the first game, right? They might have gotten their fill with the first game. And the other thing is that you can't sell Final Fantasy VII to people, Rebirth, to people who haven't played Remake. So there is no new audience to be made, or to be found, with this game. So the only thing you can do is sell the same amount of copies or less. And that is exactly what we've seen with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, the other thing is that, Square Enix could have put out Final Fantasy VII Remake on Xbox. It took a couple of years for Final Fantasy VII Remake to come to PC, right? But here we are, Final Fantasy VII Remake only on PS4 at the time of launch, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth only on PS5 at the time of launch, I mean, they did eventually put out a remake on PS5 and on PC. So you are cutting a segment of the audience, that segment being Xbox people. And honestly, Xbox is primarily a game console that is consumed by people in the West, meaning that there probably aren't a lot of folks in Japan and other parts of Asia and parts of the world that are going to give a fuck about playing a Final Fantasy game on an Xbox anyway. So maybe Square Enix was in the right to ignore Xbox, but they are ignoring some amount of sales. And they are ignoring some amount of sales by not putting out games day one on PC. I think the strategy for Square Enix going forward should be to put their games day and date on PC and PlayStation and Xbox if that's what they're going to do. Now you might be thinking, well, GnittWitt, Square Enix has such a great relationship with Sony and PlayStation, all that stuff. Yeah, but you know who also has a great relationship with Sony and PlayStation? Arrowhead Games, the people that put out Helldivers. And if you think for a second that Helldivers wouldn't be as popular of a game this year as it is if it didn't come to PC day and date, you are out of your goddamn mind. It is without a doubt a popular game, as popular of a game as it is, due in part to PC. I'm not going to give PC 50%. I'm not going to give PC 45%. I'm not trying to split, who takes the credit for Helldivers being as popular of a game as it is. But the fact is that, Helldivers is a very popular game that is available on both consoles, both PlayStation and PC. Something that I think is a lesson Square Enix should learn going forward. I'll tell you right now. I just bought Ghost of Tsushima day one on PC because it came out today, right? I would have bought Final Fantasy 16 day one if it came out on PC, right? So I say day one because today's launch day, but if I could go to a store and see go to a store, who the fuck goes to stores to buy video games anymore? But the point is that if I could have chosen between the PS5 version of Final Fantasy 16, a version of a game for a console that I don't own, or the PC version, I would have bought Final Fantasy 16 at launch on PC. No sweat, not even a thought. And I'll tell you right now, I would have bought, I know I just played Final Fantasy VII Remake last year, maybe a little Final Fantasy fantasied out. But with that said, I would have bought Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on PC day one. No problem, unless it was a hot mess and waited for, reviews. And that's just me. I obviously can't buy enough copies of Final Fantasy Rebirth to make Square Enix feel good about itself financially. But I think we're in a world now where games are just too expensive and they are too big to not be sold on as many platforms as possible. Square Enix is aggressively pursuing a multi-platform strategy, but they are also including Nintendo platforms, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Which, that makes a lot of sense considering, that we're getting a new Switch console sometime next year. Now, the company's new, let's kind of cover the facts of the story. It's not just me rambling. But the company's new medium-term business plan was shared alongside its latest financial results, and follows news of both a review of its development systems and the abandonment of projects in development. The multi-platform strategy is part of a move to, quote, diversify earnings opportunities and aims to allow more customers to enjoy our titles in regards to major franchises and AAA titles, including catalog titles. So they're putting the dang Final Fantasy on PC. Square Enix's biggest releases in recent years have been console exclusives to PlayStation. Again, just listen to me. I'm not picking on PlayStation. These are just the facts. The most recent big releases for Square Enix have been console exclusive to PlayStation, including the likes of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Final Fantasy 16, and Forspoken, with PC releases either alongside or in the pipeline. In the case of Forspoken, that did come to PC day one. The problem is that ain't nobody bought Forspoken. I hate to just throw out a bunch of slang, become a character, but in regards to Forspoken, but nobody bought Forspoken. That's why that game was $30, 6 weeks after launch or whatever. That being said, maybe one day I'll check out Forspoken, the full version, when I can get it for $15. But until then, yeah. Hey, guess what? Those were all PlayStation exclusive games. And almost every one of them underperformed according to Square Enix. With no specific games are identified here. It suggests that some of the biggest games from Square Enix could make their way to Xbox in the future, or perhaps a Switch too. At least Square Enix's biggest game, Final Fantasy VII 14, made its way to Xbox recently. Final Fantasy 14, if you don't remember, Final Fantasy 14 is the online MMO. Well, I guess I don't need to say online MMO. MMO seems for massively multiplayer online. It's their big multiplayer game, and that is on PlayStation and PC and Xbox now, and maybe in the future, Rebirth 16 and Forspoken. So let's move on from that. Let's cover this Ubisoft news, and then we'll take a break. We're gonna keep going, and then we'll do this Ubisoft news. Ubisoft, which is the name of my new Viagra alternative. Assassin's Creed Shadows is been announced by Ubisoft. We are going to feudal Japan. Trailer dropped. It was a cinematic trailer, did not show any gameplay, though I like to think you got an idea of what you can expect from the gameplay watching the trailer. That being said, Assassin's Creed Shadows, that has been announced by Ubisoft, showing a deep dive in the cinematics and its 2 playable characters. You are going to play as Japanese shinobi Naoi and a real-life historical African samurai Yasuke. Yasuke, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yasuke being the first historical figure to be a main playable character in an Assassin's Creed game. I'm going to just get this out of the way. I saw a bunch of shitty people on the internet being snarky assholes, being like, oh, I didn't know there were samurais in Africa. And I'm like, you dumb motherfucker. If you watched the trailer, you would know that the game takes place in feudal Japan and not Africa. And that, yes, there was a real historical African figure in Japan at the time. Though my understanding is, looking at the facts, he was more of a like bodyguard, like, fixer type character in the real world, and in this he's just depicted as a full-on samurai. But whatever, he was a real guy, and people are just mad because they made fucking Assassin's Creed woke by letting you play as a Japanese woman and a black guy, because the internet sucks, because they're assholes. But let's talk about the positive. Positive is, I saw that trailer. I think it looks good. I like the idea of 2 playable characters. I think it worked well in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Of course, perhaps the most famous example of playing as multiple characters is Grand Theft Auto 5, and that turned out all right. Set for release in November 15th of this year, Assassin's Creed Shadows takes place in 16th century Japan. Ubisoft put out a little announcement saying the country is heading towards a brutal path of unification where unrest grows as new coalitions appear and corruptive foreign influences infiltrate the land. Now, I will say that this is actually, I know people want to be shitty on the internet and be like, whatever, dismissive. But I did some research. I am an investigative journalist, and I have done some research, and you might be wondering, where, we have Ghost of Tsushima, we have Rise of the Ronin, we have the Shogun Revival TV show on Disney Plus, we have Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like, when and where does all this stuff take place? So I did a little bit of research. Ghost of Tsushima takes place in 1274 during the Mongol invasion of Japan. Shogun takes place in around the 1600s. Assassin's Creed Shadows takes place around the 1500s, and Rise of the Ronin takes place in 1853. So we are talking fairly distinct, sets of, timelines and moments in history within, ancient feudal Japan. Though, Assassin's Creed Shadows, at least, somewhat closely aligned with Shogun, And I only say that because, Shogun is a show and a story that deals with corruptive foreign influences and new coalitions and new alliances and stuff like that in Japan. So I'm not saying that Shogun ripped off Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm not saying the Shadows ripped off. I'm just saying that, like, when they're pulling from things in history to some extent, they only have so much history to pull from, and they chose to pull from, somewhat similar times in history. Players will experience the intertwined stories of Naoi, an adept shinobi assassin from the Iga province, and Yosuke, the powerful samurai of historical legend. Discover their personal stories, meet pivotal historical figures, and shape the duo's common destiny as they usher in a new era of Japan. Now, Assassin's Creed, this is going to be the first time that Assassin's Creed is skipping previous generation consoles. It is only coming out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Amazon Luna, Mac, and PC through the Ubisoft Store and the Epic Games Store. They are skipping Steam. Here's what we need to know about the playable characters. As Naoi and Yosuke, players can master 2 complementary playstyles, with each character featuring their own progression path, skills, weapon options, and stats. Whether they embrace Naoi's stealth kills or Yosuke's combat prowess, players will have plenty of ways to approach objectives. With Naoi, they will experience refined infiltration mechanics using light, noise, shadows, and changing surroundings to avoid detection from enemies. With Yosuke, they'll be able to take on larger groups of enemies with brutal precision. I think I'm okay with that. Now, the reason why I think I'm okay with that, because I think about my time playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla specifically. And Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a game where you play as a Viking. I don't know if you know this, but Vikings were not known for being the most stealthy characters in history. So even though I had all these options when I would enter a combat scenario, infiltrate a base, I could just go in and be like, yeah, I can be sneaky and stealthy and I can sneak around and do all this stuff. But at some point I was like, I'm just going to walk through the front gates of any enemy encampment that I find. And if I can't walk through the front gates, I'm going to kill everybody in front of the front gates until I can walk through it. And then I'm just going to walk through the base, just killing everybody instead of being a sneaky, stealthy character. I think in a scenario where Assassin's Creed Shadows is trying to encourage people to, pick one character or the other, or go back and forth between the two, because it seems like you can play them both, at the same time. You're not just like picking a character and being stuck with it. This might better encourage people to be like, hey, are you trying to do this stealthy? We have a character for that. Hey, are you trying to just, wreck shit, be a bad motherfucker? We have a character for that. And you can always mix and match to your heart's content. I just wonder if you can, take on multiple combat scenarios with the stealthy character Naoi, or if you can be a stealthy character as Yosuke. We will find out November 15th. And then Ubisoft kind of snuck this news out there. X-Defiant is coming out on the 21st. Ubisoft has canceled The Division Heartland. It's redeployed resources to X-Defiant and Rainbow Six Siege. I played some Tom Clancy's The Division Heartland. I guess I can talk about it now since they canceled the game. I don't think I was able to talk about it originally. Though I don't remember, it's all a blur. But I can tell you this. I like the Division games. The Division games are open world, action, RPG, shooter type things with an online connectivity and, the ability to play with other people, whether you're working together or fighting each other in combat scenarios and all that stuff. I enjoyed running around Washington, D.C., shooting bad guys in a post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C., type scenario in the Division 2. I think the Division 2 is a fantastic game. I think it has some of the best level design just for like shooting encounters that I have ever seen in games, at least as of recently. And again, the idea is that you shoot guys and you get better guns and you upgrade your guns and you take on missions and explore and run around. It's the story and all that stuff. The Division Heartland was not that. The Division Heartland was taking ideas from the Division, and then mixing in a bunch of survival stuff, kind of the way that, Fallout 76, has a bigger emphasis on crafting and resource management and survival type, mechanics in it. That's what the Division Heartland was going for. And I did not care much for the Division Heartland. The thing I like about the Division is running around shooting when I have to think about, oh, I only have so much oxygen left, or, oh, I have to repair this gun broke, or, oh, if I die, I lose all my equipment and I have to run back to get the equipment. Like, I just don't want to think about any of that stuff. I got to be honest. That's just not what I come to the Division for. And it seems like, Ubisoft recognizes that, and that's why they are canceling the Division Heartland. They are working on the Division 3, which should be fun. Oh God, news is dropping as I record this podcast. Fuck me. Okay. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I got to figure out the rest of these news stories because they are coming in fast and furious. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Real quick note, just an update on the Assassin's Creed Shadows story. That the physical version of Assassin's Creed Shadows will require an online connection to install the game. Of course, with any big AAA game, it will also have a day one patch. Just a continued reminder that the physical version of new AAA games are basically glorified coasters at this point. Considering you need a online connection just to install and authenticate the game, and you're going to want an online connection in order to download the latest update version of the game. But that has been confirmed by Ubisoft. Ubisoft says the game will be playable offline following an online install. So in order to get offline, you got to get online. And that's the bottom line because Ubisoft says so. Now, remember when I said that big game studios are not interested in developing new franchises, a new IP, and I, ridiculed Microsoft for doing so. Well, call me a fool, because Activision hasn't, of all people, the Call of Duty people have announced a new studio which is being established to develop a brand new franchise. The developer is called Elsewhere Entertainment, and it is a team made up of ex-CD Projekt Red developers, ex-Naughty Dog developers, Bungie, and Ubisoft talent. And there's really not much else to know other than that they are headquartered in Warsaw, Poland, and have been formed to create a brand new franchise for the Xbox-owned publisher, who, of course, we all know is best known for Call of Duty. Elsewhere team consists of, quote, storytelling experts who previously piled their trade at Naughty Dog, specifically The Last of Us and Uncharted, CD Projekt Red, specifically The Witcher and Cyberpunk, and Bungie and Ubisoft. In a blog post, Activision said Elsewhere is, quote, exclusively focused on creating a new narrative-based, genre-defining AAA franchise. The team's underlying mission encourages everyone to explore and collaborate creatively to craft a franchise with an enduring legacy that resonates far beyond games. Elsewhere is opening its search for the best-in-class talent from across the industry and around the world to help create a state-of-the-art and next-generation gaming experience. The idea being that, if I had to guess, Microsoft wants a big brand new franchise for its next Xbox, and damn it, Elsewhere is gonna give it to them. A lot of good names for the podcast today, between offline you got to get offline to get online, or the other way around, or Elsewhere gonna give it to you. A lot of good names. It will be followed. Just a reminder that Xbox, of course, being Activision Blizzard, Bethesda, and Xbox Game Studios, will have a live stream on June 9th. It will then be followed by a mystery product showcase, which is expected to be this year's Call of Duty game. This year's Call of Duty game is Black Ops. We already know that. They didn't even have to announce it. It's just so painfully obvious that it's Black Ops. And it will be set in the 1990s during the Gulf War. Even though it's not been announced, we already know this. Just how it works. And speaking of Summer Games Fest, I really enjoy is a strong word. I enjoy Summer Game Fest. I like that the industry is still finding ways to come together to talk announcements and events and things like that. I like that other people have put on other showcases in and around Summer Game Fest. I think about Tribeca. I think about Day of the Devs and all the indie publishers and indie devs out there that come together. And I think focusing on it being a virtual, showcase, I think makes a lot of sense. People are more than willing to sit in front of their computer, phone, iPad, whatever, TV, and watch these announcements on things like YouTube. It makes a lot of sense. So Summer Game Fest has confirmed a lineup of over 55 partners. Those partners including PlayStation, Xbox, Capcom, EA, Ubisoft, and Epic Games. I don't know if I want to read this entire list, because some of these don't even make games. Like Razer didn't make games. Private Division now just like one guy? Anyways, there is a huge list of people that are going to be, or studios and companies, they'll be a part of Summer Game Fest. The Summer Game Fest live showcase will take place on Friday, June 7th at 2 p.m. It'll be on YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff. Day of the Devs Summer Game Fest edition will be presented online via live stream immediately following the Summer Game Fest. And for those that are part of the invite-only media and influencer event in downtown Los Angeles, Summer Game Fest Play Days will be held on June 8th to June 10th. This is just like breaking news. This just dropped very short time ago. So I'm getting this just the way you're getting it. I've not even read this news article. To me, it seems kind of crazy, but we'll read it anyways. Friday the 13th villain Jason Voorhees is set to appear in more games. This is from Video Games Chronicles. As always, shout out to Video Games Chronicles. A new enterprise called Jason Universe will bring the slasher icon to a range of media. and listen, I don't want to. We're going to keep reading this news story. I'm not just going to talk all over it. But when I read a new enterprise called Jason Universe will bring the slasher icon to a range of media, to me, this says that whoever owns the rights to Friday the 13th is just going to be out there whoring old Jason Voorhees to just about any game franchise that'll have him, right? Fuck it. Let's put Jason Voorhees in Tetris. Let's put him in Call of Duty. Let's put him in Fortnite. Put Jason Voorhees in Fortnite, cowards. They already put Michael Myers in there. Let's keep reading. This is a report from IGN that has been, redone by Video Games Chronicles. Jason Voorhees will be run in collaboration with Friday the 13th screenwriter Victor Miller, who owns the domestic rights to the original movie. The Jason Universe Facebook page describes it as a new era of the Friday the 13th franchise. And they say, stay tuned for news on fresh entertainment, games, experiences, merch, and more, starring everyone's favorite hockey mask wearing villain. That's it. They just announced that. And here's the thing that I think is weird, is that there are no Friday the 13th games out now. Like, they don't have anything. They have put out a brand that has nothing going on. There's no Friday the 13th game. because that Friday the 13th game from 2017 was pulled from sale December 31st of 2023. The same thing with the critically acclaimed mobile puzzle game, Friday the 13th Killer Puzzle, which was delisted and removed on January of 2023. So we don't have any console or PC games. We don't have any mobile games for Friday the 13th. The last thing we have is that Jason appeared as a DLC character in Mortal Kombat X alongside movie villains The Predator, Alien, and Leatherface. And if you're wondering, Mortal Kombat X is 2 Mortal Kombats ago. So they don't have nothing. There's nothing relevant. Like, poor Jason, man, he's just out there trying to like regain some clout, some popularity. They're just out there slanging that Jason and they don't have anything to show for it. But hey, maybe it is a new and exciting time for the franchise. I can't wait until I can go to Hot Topic and buy, another Friday the 13th. I already own a Friday the 13th shirt. Actually, today, for those that are watching the video version, I have my Suns Out, Guts Out Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface shirt on. I was not prepared for any of these news stories, and I'm sticking to it. I don't know what else to say. This is actually, I was like excited to read this news story, and turns out there's not a lot of news to actually cover. Now, this is a report. This is maybe rumors and speculation, but I think this is obvious to anyone who's been listening to this podcast. More Xbox games are reportedly coming to PS5 as part of Microsoft's Project Latitude. It's claimed that Microsoft wants a no red line policy for which games could release for Sony's consoles. That's it. That's really it. So if you've been waiting for Forza Horizon 5 or Halo or Gears of War or Starfield or Indiana Jones or Forza Motorsport or I was going to say Pentiment. Pentiment's already out on PlayStation. If you've been waiting for all of those games to come to PlayStation 5, they probably will in time. And it's worked out because some of the Xbox games have been some of the top sellers on PlayStation. So clearly, there are people out there who want to play these Xbox games, but have not been able to do so because they do not have a PC or an Xbox to do so, but would be willing to buy them on PlayStation 5. So expect more Xbox games to come to PS5 in the somewhat near future, assuming the sun doesn't kill us all. Speaking of killing, the UK government says that there are no legal requirements for games to remain playable after their online status has been terminated. The Stop Killing Games campaign is seeking changes in UK law regarding older titles. Stop Killing Games is a campaign which saw a petition calling for provisions in UK law to protect older games and has reached 10,000 signatures. Now, if you go to the Stop Killing Games campaign, this isn't just about the UK. There are various, when you go to the website, you can select your country of residence and all that stuff. And it'll allow you to, contact your, a bunch of different organizations and things like that, which you can do. I will do that once I'm done recording this podcast. But anyways, go to stopkillinggames.com to find out more. But as of right now, they've tried to get in contact with the UK, and the UK basically said, sorry, that's probably really gross, that there is no legal requirement, to which Stop Killing Games says, well, maybe there should be a legal requirement. Maybe we should be able to play the crew until the end of time. So, a statement from the Department of Culture, Media and Sports reads, consumers should be aware that there is no requirement in UK law compelling software companies and providers to support older versions of their operating systems, software, or connected products. There may be occasions where companies make commercial decisions based on the high running costs of maintaining older servers for video games that have declining user bases. The DCMS did state, however, that all companies operating in the UK The DCMS did state, however, that all companies operating in the UK are still beholden to consumer law, which, of course, they already said there is no consumer law for this stuff. Well, they did say this. They said, if consumers are led to believe that a game will remain playable indefinitely for certain systems despite the end of physical support, the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulations 2008 may require that the game remains technically feasible to play under those circumstances. Of course, all these companies have legally skirted that by never saying that they'd be playable indefinitely. We're almost there. I know it's a lot of news. We're almost there. Let's just keep going. So, Warner Brothers is trying to save money left, right, and center, including potentially delisting old games that were put out by their indie publishing label, Adult Swim Games. Adult Swim, if you don't know, the TV show Rick and Morty, the terrific TV show Joe Pera Talks with You, which they canceled because fucking Adult Swim's hates fun. But anyways, Warner Brothers appears to have backed down from its plans to delist more than a dozen games that were published by Adult Swim Games label from Steam and digital console stores. Warner Brothers WBD now plans to transfer ownership of some of those games back to the indie devs that made them, according to developers who have been affected by the planned delistings. The idea being that these indie devs made the games, but Warner Brothers owned the distribution rights because they published them, and we're going to just retire the games because they didn't want to sell them anymore for whatever reason. Now looks like they're going to try to transfer ownership back to those developers so that they continue to sell the games, republish them, update them however they want. Plans to delist the Adult Swim game catalog from digital stores or retire them, as Warner Brothers Discovery had worded it, became public in March and were widely criticized as cold corporate moves that could make some indie games unplayable to purchase. That strong criticism appears to have played a part in WBD's revised plan to transfer ownership of the games back to their creators. New WBD policy reversal was first revealed by developer Owen Deary. Owen Deary, who is the developer behind the puzzle adventure game Small Radios, Big Televisions, which was originally published by Adult Swim Games back in 2016. Deary also broke the news of WBD's original plans to retire all Adult Swim games back in March. On the social media platform Twitter, I refuse to call it X, Deary wrote that Small Radios, Big Televisions will not be retired despite previous communication from WBD that it would be. Ownerships and store listings will return to me. And then other developers kind of sharing a similar story around that stuff. But Warner Brothers is in the business of tax cuts, and that's about it. The reason why I say that is because they've canceled a lot of projects, even ones that were basically done. So the media conglomerate planned removal of Adult Swim Games echoed similar cuts from its film and television business. Of course, they canceled Joe Pera Talks with You, to which I say, fuck them. Joe Pera Talks with You is maybe the greatest TV show ever made. But Warner Brothers Discovery infamously scrapped plans to release the nearly complete movies that were Batgirl and Coyote vs. Acme, and removed multiple series from its Max streaming service. Warner Brothers has since licensed some of its scrapped television content to other streamers, including the animated series Batman Caped Crusader, which will now be streaming on Amazon Prime Video this summer. I cannot wait for Batman Caped Crusader. I am a big fan of Batman the Animated Series. Batman Mask of the Phantasm might be the best Batman movie ever made, regardless of whether it's live action or cartoon animated. But yeah, they are in Warner Brothers does not actually care about producing content. They seem to be just canceling stuff for tax breaks. And that was part of the plan with Adult Swim Games, but that seems to no longer be happening. Now, while on the topic of video game, content that are not actually video games. Amazon has greenlit a Tomb Raider TV series from Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Crystal Dynamics and Amazon have also partnered on a new film and a new video game, so get ready for more Tomb Raider than you can shake a stick at. The British actor, screenwriter, and producer who won an Emmy, Golden Globe, and BAFTA awards for her work on Fleabag will serve as writer and executive producer on the TV show. The series, based on the iconic Tomb Raider video game franchise, follows the adventures of world-famous archaeologist and adventurer Lara Croft. It is being produced by Crystal Dynamics and Amazon MGM Studios and will premiere exclusively on Prime Video. I mean, that's it. They talk about how excited they are about the show, whatever. But that's kind of it. So all we know is that Amazon is cooking up a movie, a game, and a TV show based on Tomb Raider. And then finally, the last bit of news. Mortal Kombat 2, the movie, has been given a release date of 2025. The film will make its way to cinemas late next year. That is, of course, the sequel to the 2021 live action film. And I gotta say, if you've not seen, well, first of all, you should go watch the original Mortal Kombat movie. Go watch the original Mortal Kombat movie. That's a great time. I'll wait. No, I'm just playing. Go watch the original Mortal Kombat movie. It's a great time. That being said, I think the 2021 movie is also pretty good. It is one of the better video game adaptations out there that I have seen. It very, very painfully obviously ends with a teaser for a sequel. That's fine. However, that movie has been long in the works and is now finally coming out in 2025. We got to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the games that I've been playing. Those games being Diablo 4, Fallout 4, and Starfield. Stick around. Final break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. I continue to be GnittWitt. I have not been replaced by an AI just yet. That's coming next week. A huge amount of games to talk about, games that I have been playing. Big Diablo 4 update came out yesterday. Was he? No, it was Tuesday. I'm getting my shit wrong. Big Diablo 4 update came out on Tuesday. A big Starfield update came out on Wednesday, yesterday. And then, of course, Diablo 4, Starfield. Been playing some Fallout 4, and then, of course, Ghost of Tsushima is out today. I've not had a chance to play it. I have a chance to install it. I've not had a chance to play it. Leave me alone. With all that said, I've been playing some Diablo 4. So Diablo 4 put out an update. The big focus for Diablo 4 was about re-examining, kind of reimagining the way that you get weapons and armor and jewelry. Basically reimagine the loot in Diablo 4. And the idea being that when you get loot and new weapons and stuff like that in Diablo 4, it's a lot. Simplifying is a strong word, and I know people have criticized Diablo games over the years of oversimplifying things as the years go on. But I would say that in this scenario, what's really happened is Diablo 4 has made it cleaner and clearer to understand what your weapon, perks and bonuses and buffs are in the game. And I think they've probably adjusted the way a lot of the skills work in the game. But let me give an example. Like in Diablo 4, you can get, you can pick up a ring, and that ring, gives you like, two bonuses to your skills. And in the past, it was a lot more vague and complicated about how that stuff would apply. And it seems like this time around, they have really simplified and streamlined that process. So it's like, hey, this number goes up, this number goes down, these numbers go up, this number goes down. It's just very clean and clear to be like, okay, this is what I'm getting as part of the upgrade. if I choose to upgrade my weapons, this is what I get as part of switching out these pair of boots and whatever. And it turns out that that might be all that I needed to get back into Diablo 4, because I've had a really great time with Diablo 4 since this update has come out. I really had a fun time experimenting with, different skills and abilities and perks and bonuses to go with the these new loot and armor and weapons that I'm getting. The other thing I would say is that it turns out that I'm not quite done playing Diablo 4. Even though I finished the main story, I still don't have a character that I've gotten to maximum level with. So there's still, skeletons out there to blow up and all of that stuff. The thing I'll say is that I continue to not find the seasonal content in Diablo 4 particularly interesting. So what they do is every new season, their big events, typically run for about 3-4 months. And during that time, you can experience the new story that they wrote, the new, gameplay activities and all the stuff that they've added to the game. You can experience all of that stuff, but you have to start a new character. And as someone who's put 80 hours into a character that I haven't even hit max level with, I would like to continue to grow my Sorcerer. Again, another good name for this podcast, Grow My Sorcerer. Grow my character and all of that stuff. And even if there is, a lot of repeatable, same old content that I'm seeing in Diablo 4, there are still dungeons I haven't explored yet. There are still quests I haven't finished and all that stuff. So there is still a lot of things left for me to do in Diablo 4. And honestly, I just don't feel like I want to make a new character if I can avoid it. So as of right now, I continue to play that game with the character that I started when I first played the game. And I'm going to continue to do so because I really enjoyed it. I I switched. I used to be a sorcerer that was focusing a lot on electricity. So what I typically did is I had these ice spells that would freeze my enemies and grant me an ice shield and an ice wall and all of that stuff. And then I would use the electricity to shock all the enemies and all that stuff. I was also using a basic attack that was a melee attack. So despite being a sorcerer, I kind of wave this electrical stick in front of people and shock them and all that stuff. Now I've switched to being primarily fire. So I now am using these abilities that summon these 3-headed dragons that shoot fire at enemies. I got a pair of boots that allow me to cast more of these hydras. I can basically plant 3 different hydras. 3 different sets of these hydras, on the battlefield or whatever, which allow me to basically, have them attack enemies on my behalf, set them on fire. That fire is now burning damage. So once the enemies get hit, they're taking less damage, as they stand there, whether I continue to attack them or not. And that's because I got, upgrades and abilities that now give me better bonuses to those fire attacks. And I was like, okay, let me switch up my character, abilities and stuff and see how that goes. So overall, I found Diablo 4, that simple change in a lot of the way the loot is presented and organized and all that stuff to be incredibly effective. And I could see myself playing a lot more of Diablo 4 for the time being, especially a game where I'm I got TV on in the background and I'm not really paying that much attention to anything that's happening. I'm just being oh, I'm going to blow up these skeletons with a fireball and get better boots and, level up my character and all that stuff. So Diablo 4 update actually really brought me back to the game. Pleasantly surprised. Despite not being as excited about the Diablo 4 update as other big game updates coming out that we'll talk about in just a moment. I was not as excited about the Diablo 4 update. I have been pleasantly surprised by Diablo 4. Diablo 4 is also on Game Pass now. If you have not had a chance to check out Diablo 4, check it out. It is on Game Pass if you haven't done so already. I have been really enjoying my time with Diablo 4 since that update. It's a shame that so many things are coming out that it'll probably pull me away from playing more Diablo 4, but really, really happy with that update, that new loot system and upgrades and all that stuff. Been a lot of fun. The other big update was for Starfield. That came out just yesterday. I've not had a chance to play as much of that Starfield update as I have the Diablo 4 update, but I will say this. I felt like there was still a lot of Starfield left for me to play. The other thing I'm going to say is and this is a warning right now as we talk about Starfield, there are going to be spoilers for Starfield. I need to talk about the ending of Starfield. I need to talk about the story of Starfield, because that's going to explain a lot of how I feel about playing Starfield now, right? I remember talking about how, like, it seems like after you beat Starfield, it becomes a worse experience. And I'm going to explain why. Okay. So starting now, there will be spoilers for Starfield. Starting now, spoilers for Starfield. In 3, 2, 1. So the story in Starfield is that you start out the game, regardless of what character you make, you start out as a humble miner, working for a mining organization, and you stumble across this magic rock that basically shows you the universe. So you touch it, and it gives you like this, fantastical out of body experience where you get to see the whole universe. Upon experiencing that and you explaining that to your other miner friends that, hey, I just saw like the farthest reaches of the universe. Your miner friends say, hey, you got to get in contact with these people called Constellation. They are a group of galactic explorers that are exploring artifacts, just like the one that you discovered as a miner. You discover this artifact, you touch it, you see the farthest reaches of the universe. And then they're like, you got to get this artifact to Constellation. And from there, you meet members of Constellation. And as the story progresses, you are trying to figure out what these artifacts mean, why they have such a strong impact on the people that experience them. Following a series of clues collected, basically a large part of the game is you running around collecting these artifacts with the members of Constellation. Okay. However, you come across this starborn life form. They call it the starborn life form, basically. And I'm basically just going to sum up the whole story of Starfield right here, because this is going to make a lot of sense. I promise you. So as you get closer and closer to the truth, collecting these artifacts, there's a level in the game where you are attacked at one of your Constellation headquarters, and this character who kills who kills one of the main characters in the game, and that character is referred to as Starborn. They are the Hunter Starborn. And you don't really know who this character is or why they attacked you, or like, oh, you're getting too close to the truth. But basically, you're on this space station that's run by Constellation. This Starborn Hunter attacks that facility, kills one of your members of Constellation. As you continue to track down these artifacts, you meet another Starborn character called the Emissary. And they explain that the Starborn people are not aliens, but in fact humans from a parallel universe. So these are humans that have been basically studying Constellation and are familiar with the artifacts. They know everything about the universe, but they come from a parallel universe. And the idea being that you can choose to, work with them, or you can work with the Emissary, you can work with the Hunter. This is kind of where the choices in the game come in. You can work with the Emissary, you can work with the Hunter, if you want to, once you've assembled and found all of the artifacts. I hope this makes sense. Once you've assembled all the artifacts, you will be able to reach the Unity, which is the center of the universe and is a gateway to another parallel universe. And it's been kind of confirmed that the Starborn, one of them being the person who attacked your Constellation team, have been competing to find artifacts across countless parallel universes. So they've been doing this forever, like a very, very long period of time, right? At some point, you will have collected all of the artifacts in the game. And you can choose to go to the Unity or not. So this is the ending of Starfield. You've collected all of the artifacts. You approach the Unity, and you are basically standing at the gateway of the parallel universe, right? Upon reaching the gateway to the parallel universe, you encounter a parallel version of yourself. They explain that you will become Starborn if you enter this parallel universe, right? You will become one of these people that have been competing to find artifacts throughout multiple parallel universes. And it's a very weird thing because like you basically reach the ending of that game and then you see yourself and yourself is like, hey, here's all the things that you did in the game. Like, here's the relationships you made with all these characters. Here's the choices you made and all of this stuff. And then basically they're like, so do you want to walk into the parallel universe? And when you do that, it restarts the game. Like, that's it. Credits roll. You restart the game as yourself, but Starborn. And you get a couple of things. So you get like the Starborn outfit. You get like the Starborn crazy spaceship. And you keep the character level and the skills and upgrades that you have. But you lose all your weapons, all your money. And you basically start out the game just after, I believe it's just after the first artifact is discovered. So it's this weird thing where you basically start the game as yourself, but with all the knowledge of the stuff you've done before, in the middle of the first city from the game, whatever the hell they call this city in the game. And it's like, okay, go talk to the people, go introduce. Then basically the game starts and it's like, go introduce yourself to the people of Constellation. And you go talk to the people of Constellation and all of your dialogue has changed. All the dialogue has changed. And you can tell them, hey, I know everything about the universe. I know who you all are. I know what you're all trying to do. Or you can choose none of that and play dumb and pretend that you don't know anything about their mission and all their story stuff, right? Because it's like this weird thing where like, if you tell them who you are, then you have to answer a bunch of questions about what happened, right? Like, for example, you can go talk to the person that you saw die when the Starborn originally attacked them and be like, hey, just so you know, I watched you die. And you're like, that's fucking weird. And you basically have to answer a bunch of questions to prove that you know who they are and what's going on. Or you can choose to totally ignore that and just be like, hey, I just want to help you guys out. I don't know anything. I chose to walk through that parallel universe and start a new game. I chose to tell them that I knew everything about what had happened to us, Constellation, myself, all the characters, up until that point. And it broke the game. It broke the game. It broke the game. Because it basically skips a bunch of the story missions that you would have done, again, if you chose to. It skips all the story missions, a bunch of the story missions, and it also disables a bunch of the features that you would have had access to if you had been a real, genuine member of Constellation like you did the first time around. So it feels like it's a scenario where, and I should also mention that, like, if you continue to play through the story multiple times, you will get more upgrades and unlocks every time you restart the story with that parallel universe, right? The multiverse, whatever you want to call it. But like, there's a character in the game that you used to be able to go to who would buy your map data. So if you came across a planet and you went on that planet and you scanned the flora and the fauna and the resources, if you got like basically map telemetry data of these unknown planets, you could turn to this guy and sell it to him in the original game. But since saying that I'm Starborn, he doesn't let me sell that data, which was a good way of earning money in the game. So I had to go find other ways to make money in the game because that was just broken by becoming Starborn. And so it was a scenario where I was like, okay, I feel like a lot of the game is now like weirdly like closed off for me because I chose to skip a big part of the story, a big part of replaying the story, but basically telling them I knew who they were and what was going on. But the thing is that like you have the choice to redo everything in the game. Like at some point you're just replaying the game again with these slightly different modifiers. And for a game that I spent like 150 hours in, I just felt like I would rather get to the story levels and the missions and the quests and all the stuff that I had not done originally because I was, speeding my way through the game. But in a weird way, I feel punished for doing so. So with all that said, I felt pretty bittersweet about the idea of getting back into Starfield, but I was really excited to see what they could do with the game. That DLC, that big expansion is coming at some point in time. There's, they're updating the game and fixing stuff and cleaning up the technical stuff. And, it's a big Bethesda open world RPG, right? Like I spent a lot of time playing Fallout, and Starfield is definitely a technically better game than Fallout. It looks better. It runs better. It has better shooting and all that stuff. And there are changes to it, but I had played a lot of Fallout and I had played a lot of Starfield, but I had not played as much Starfield as I did Fallout. So I fired it up, and they've added a lot of stuff. Like they've added different difficulty customizations in terms of, do you want your bullets to have weight to them? Do you want to take more damage? Do you want to deal more damage? Do you want ship combat to be easier, harder? And as you modify that stuff, it'll modify how much experience you get. So you might level up faster because you made the game harder. You might level up slower because you made the game easier. They've added that map data. So now when you are in a city, you can actually look at a map of what the points of interest are. In the past, you had to open up your scanner and pretty much memorize the location of all these different cities across all these dozens and dozens of different planets. And it was a nightmare. Like I basically would always go to the same city to do the things I needed to do in those cities because I didn't want to run around and explore because I didn't know where anything was. So what have they done? They have cleaned up a lot of the technical difficulties. The technical problems in Starfield. They've made it easier to navigate. They've also added far more options to make the game interesting in terms of making the game easier or harder for yourself. However, they have not fixed all of the technical difficulties because there was one side mission that I was trying to do in Starfield the second time around that was just broken. I could not, there is a mission that I went to a bank in one of the big cities in Starfield, and the bank's like, hey, we'll pay you on the low to go basically collect our unpaid debts, right? And one of the unpaid debts is I have to go fly to this, this part in space where there's this guy floating around in a spaceship, and I need to blow up the spaceship and kill him, right? And then collect whatever money he has and give it to the bank. I'm doing dark business for the bank as part of one of the side missions, right? It's this whole storyline around you collecting debts from these dirt bags, right? And you have different ways of handling it and different people to go do and all that stuff. But you go to the part in space where the guy's supposed to be, and the ship's already blown up. But the quest is go blow up the ship. So I sat there and I shot at the ship with my spaceship and all this stuff, and it doesn't do anything. And I reloaded the game and it's broken. And I waited for all these updates to come out, and it's still broken. Like there's literally there's broken. Like, listen, I can play through the main story of Starfield again, no problem. Even though I feel like they give you less choices and your choices are less interesting the second time around. Despite, like, imagine if you played a Telltale game and you were literally able to tell the people in the Telltale game that hey, I know what's going to happen, right? Like, that's a really cool idea. Like, it's a really interesting idea to be like, I actually know what choices we're going to make and what the outcomes are. Like, if you could tell that to the people in The Quarry or the characters in Telltale's Batman, like, it's a really cool idea. Unfortunately, it actually closes off more avenues of discussion and interactivity than it opens. And I think that's one of the damnedest things about the idea that in Starfield, you are meant to replay that game many times and make different decisions every time, when it feels like you have less and less options for interaction depending on what choice you make. So that's all to say that, yes, there are still plenty of side missions for me to do and explore, and plenty of, in Starfield, I, picked a character that my travel companion. We ended up forming a romantic relationship. We made all these choices. I learned all about her and all that stuff. And in it was really interesting because there's this lady named Andreja who is one of the members of Constellation who you can have as a travel companion and form a romantic relationship with. And I did that the first time around in the game. So when I met her, I was like, hey, in another world, we loved each other, which is like, it's a really cool idea. Like, I cannot stress enough. It's such a cool idea to like spend all this time and make all these choices in this game to then tell somebody, hey, like that's such a cool idea, right? It's such a neat idea. But I had to then do all the same things I did with her again in my second playthrough of Starfield to make her fall back into the romantic relationship with me, even though I told her all that stuff. Like you can't skip. So it's like, it's really uneven with the way that Starfield kind of lets you, basically predict the future by have done it, been there, done that before. It's very weird. I know I'm rambling, but it's such a neat, crazy idea that I feel like falls apart way more often than it should. And when it doesn't fall apart, it doesn't feel like it produces any sort of interesting outcome as a result. So instead, I just, spent a bunch of time shooting bad guys with Andreja until she fell in love with me again. And then I did her story mission around like earning her trust. And then now we're in love again, but she doesn't react as if we've been in love before because she doesn't know that. And I don't have any more dialogue options around like, hey, we used to be like this and now we're back to this and all that stuff. Like it's very, very weird. It's very weird. But again, there are story missions that are like, side quests and I went to an alien planet I had never been before. I started scanning a bunch of rocks. I came across weird alien, jungle monsters and I shot them and did all that stuff. And I tried to build a base and there's lots of things to do in Starfield. I just don't find any of it particularly interesting. I really don't. I don't. Even the stuff that I have never seen before feels like the same old, unfortunately. So there are still a lot of, basically there are these like, side plots that you can do, in regards to the different factions and organizations that you can join in Starfield. And I have not done those. Those are some of the biggest, meatiest side stories in the game. Maybe I'll do those. I don't know, but, I just didn't find it particularly interesting or captivating. I didn't find the gunplay that much more interesting than Fallout. The other thing I'll say with Fallout is I did put a lot of mods into Fallout, so I've added a bunch of guns that weren't originally in the game and all sorts of stuff that wasn't originally in Fallout to make it more exciting. And maybe there'll come a time when they have mod support for Starfield, in which case maybe I'll fuck around with it. Or maybe I'll come back and fuck around with Starfield once that big expansion comes out. I know one of the things that they want to do in Starfield is add planetary vehicles, because right now you land on a planet and you're just walking everywhere. There's no other way to explore those planets. But maybe I'll keep poking at Starfield. I don't know. I just feel like in a scenario where I have been enjoying my time revisiting Fallout, which already scratches a lot of the itches that Starfield tries to do. The fact that I have found myself really enjoying getting back into Diablo 4 with those updates, and the fact that I need to go play Ghost of Tsushima, I just feel like there isn't really a time and place for Starfield right now, despite them continuing to put out these big updates, which makes me wonder, should they even bother? Like, I know they sold the DLC, they have to put out the DLC, but like, should they spend all this time, updating a game that, like, listen, I'll tell you right now, if 6 months from now Starfield comes to PS5, it'll probably be a way better version of Starfield than I played originally, and it'll probably be the version to play, right? It'll probably be a better version of Starfield, right? And for those PS5 owners who have never played Starfield, yeah, like playing through it once is a pretty decent time. Though I would argue that it really becomes diminishing returns if you attempt to play through that game a second time. And like I said, like the main story of Starfield isn't that amazing. It's pretty convoluted and hokey. But there are interesting planets to explore. There are plenty of fun characters to meet. The first time around, building your spaceship and managing your crew and all that, and deciding who you want to become partners with and romantic interests and all that stuff. Like, it is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that 100-ish hour time with Starfield. I just feel like I was punished for trying to play through the game again, despite that being very much what the game wants you to do. So I might be putting a pause on Starfield for the time being. Really excited to play Ghost of Tsushima. I cannot wait. I got to stop talking so I can go and play some Ghost of Tsushima. But I will say that, like, I think Starfield is probably going to be dropped for the time being. I'll probably keep picking at Fallout, keep playing around with some of the mods. I know they're breaking mods with every update that they put out. And I also bought the DLC for Fallout 4, so I need to go visit Far Harbor, and I need to visit Nuka World, and I'm probably going to keep picking at a lot of the... So I think what I'm going to do in Fallout 4 is ignore most of the story. Like, most of that main story I'm going to ignore, and instead do all of the side stuff and all the DLC that I find interesting for the time being. So yeah, I think the Bethesda games are good. I think Fallout 4 is a good game. I think Starfield is a good game. Though you will hit a limit with those games, and it's, kind of up to you to decide if they're still worth picking at, or if you should move on to another one, right? Like, I'm sure people had the same problems with Skyrim as they do with as I do with Starfield and Fallout and all of that stuff. So yeah, I hope I've properly explained the plot line of Starfield, that you touch an artifact as a space miner, you join a group of people that are hunting for artifacts. At some point, the hunt for artifacts gets one of your team members killed, and you kind of have a choice in who dies or who doesn't. You meet the people hunting for the artifacts. They tell you that they're humans from a parallel universe. You collect all the artifacts and can eventually walk into that parallel universe and restart the entire storyline. And then based on how you approach the discussion of that storyline, you can either tell them, the Constellation people, that you know everything about their journey collecting the artifacts or not. And I chose to tell them, and I feel like I was burned as a result. And that's kind of my experience with Starfield. We'll have a lot more to say on Ghost of Tsushima. We'll also have a lot to say on X-Defiant, Tom Clancy's X-Defiant. That is out on Tuesday of next week. We'll have lots to say on both of those games. And this has been a long one, and that's going to do it for Glitch Report. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. We got to record some more TikToks. We're going to have more TikToks dropping on Friday, so check out those on Friday and throughout the weekend. And we will see you all next week, 94 of Glitch Report. It was a doozy, but we got there in the end. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next week. Take it easy.